Hey everyone, it's me, Elijah Samuelson of EDH Takes, joined with my lovely assistant, Spencer Cook.
Howdy.
And today we had an idea for a podcast where we'd go against the grain of the other Magic content creators and their podcasts, their videos, all this stuff. They're always doing this thing where they're trying to help people win more games. And I just think, it's been done. It's been solved. People figured that out.
I get it, guys. I'm here trying to win. Okay.
So we thought it would be interesting to have a Commander podcast where we tell people about the virtues of losing more games.
And also maybe giving you some tips on losing, I'm sure. Although you guys might not need them.
Yeah, there's a there's a dumb little reference that I break out, and you've probably heard this spiel before, Spencer, of Disney's Gargoyles. The villain from that, his name was David Xanatos, and he was the originator of this trope called the Xanatos Gambit, where at the end of an episode of Gargoyles, he's the bad guy, so it's a children's cartoon. He would mostly lose. Mm-hmm. The good guys win. But at the end of the episode, his assistant would go up to him and be like, "Man, really, really sucks that we lost today, didn't it?" And then he'd be like, "But did we?" Because he always learned something. He always gained something from every defeat. And he used that to work towards an eventual victory. I never finished the show, to be honest, so I'm kind of a fake Gargoyles fan.
To work towards self-actualization.
So in Commander, I think that more people ought to practice that old Xanatos Gambit and think, you get to the end of the game, you're like, somebody's like, "Oh man, it sucks that you had a rough game." You're like, "Did I though?
Did I though?" The fact that I kept a bad hand and hit 2 land drops, that really taught me something.
It's big copium, but kind of a healthy copium.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've talked about this before on the podcast where you really need to get comfortable with the idea of losing a lot of games in Commander, because if things are fair and balanced with your pod or your playgroup, you really should only be winning about a quarter of your games.
Yeah. And, in that being said, 75% of the time means you're losing. And if you're the kind of person who can't handle a loss or doesn't take a loss very well, I'm sure, we've been those people in our lives, or we've known people like that. It can be kind of awkward or kind of disappointing because you should be losing a lot. And if you're not losing, 75% of the time, it could be a sign that maybe you're doing something to make the game less fun for other people, or you're power gaming, or maybe your opponents just aren't as invested and you're kind of going a little hard, but it might be a sign that something bad's happening.
Yeah, and let's run out the numbers of how many losses you could expect in a row sometimes, because I think it's pretty common. The average Commander player, they're playing maybe once a week.
Yeah.
They either have a regular play group or they go and play at their LGS Commander night. And so let's say that person is playing for 4 to 5 hours. That breaks down to, on average, 2 to 3 games, would you say?
Yeah, sure.
If you're lucky, that's pretty reasonable.
Depending
maybe
on
more, maybe less. So if you're getting 4 games a week, maybe, and you're losing 75% of the time, you might have, those might all come at the same time. You might lose an entire night straight.
Yeah.
And then the next week, that might happen again. And that's not that seems like a crazy thing. That might feel like, oh my god, I'm on the biggest losing streak of all time. It's not really that crazy.
Yeah, it's actually, if you look into the statistics of it, right, the odds of things happening in a row like that it's expected over a long enough sample size. So people will say people will think about this in terms of I'm drawing too many lands, or I'm drawing not enough lands. I gotta shuffle better because I've got a clump of lands. Well, a clump of lands is actually expected in a random distribution of your deck, in the same way that a clump of losses, and wins to a much lesser degree, but a clump of losses especially, because it's 3 times as likely, or 3 to 1 odds of you winning, losing versus winning. It's very expected that you could lose 4 or 5 games in a row, right? Obviously.
Yeah, and there's even also more. A kind of a self-serving bias in a way that you notice more negative things happening to you than you typically notice the positive or the average situation. So you notice when you have that long string of losses, but in a couple weeks of playing Commander, say I'm winning Not necessarily every game, because you probably would notice that if you were just clean. And people would point it out too, right? Like that's kind of like a part of commander politics.
Yeah.
If somebody wins every game for a couple weeks, people would notice that.
And that's probably not an outlier.
Yeah, but say you win 3/4 of your games, or you win half your commander games over like a couple of weeks. You probably don't notice that, and you don't really think about it.
Yeah, that's true. If you know, maybe 10 games and maybe you win like 4 or 5 of them, you know, you might just be like, yeah, I'm winning about half the time. And that's kind of normal, right? Like I'm a good player. You probably wouldn't notice like that anomaly, like kind of like a statistical anomaly there.
Yeah, so if you feel like you are losing the majority of your commander games, I would actually encourage people who are like feeling that to actually look at the reality of the situation. Maybe like, I know people who like track their games.
Yeah.
Either have like a notebook or like a spreadsheet or something. I know Dana Roach does that over the course of like an entire year.
Yeah, and I don't think you need to do that for like a year. I mean, obviously a higher sample size is going to be much more accurate, but I think, you know, if you're just trying to get like a general vibe feeling, maybe something like 20 games could be a good example. I don't know. Just as a off the top of the head, maybe if you're winning like 5 out of your 20 games, you know, you might feel that might feel like you're losing all the time, but that's exactly expected, right? 5 out of 20.
Yeah. So I think people at this point kind of understand that you should lose most of your games, but the problem with Commander is that there's really bad things that arise from people's desire to win more than their share of games, or even just like get up to the point of like winning like the adequate share. Like it leads to a lot of hurt feelings, and people they transfer that onto their opponents, who they come to see as adversaries and obstacles.
And there's a world where if you have a pod where everyone is on the same page and you're all like actively pushing to like eke out every percentage point you can, that it actually meets in the middle and everyone is like at that 25% range. But I think what's going to happen more often is that if you kind of go for that mindset, your opponents are going to be probably a little bit less invested in that than you are, and you're going to feel bad when you lose because your opponents aren't trying as hard. You should win because you're actually really trying really hard, and you're gonna make your opponents feel bad when you start winning, you know, 40, 50, 60% of your games if you're really kind of power gaming on them.
Yeah, you'll move the needle because you're actively pushing it. You're like pushing somebody else like out of like the win percentage like space that they occupy, and like they're just not gonna, most reasonable, they're not gonna fight you for that. Like they're not gonna think about it like that, and they're not gonna really like, oh man, like this person's really like powering up their decks, like what am I gonna do? Like it happens, but yeah, it's less likely. So one thing that happens from this is people will lose a lot of games and they'll go to a place like r/EDH. And this is something we've seen over the last couple years because it's a pretty common problem people have. And they'll say, I'm losing a lot of my games. Like, I'm losing too often. What should I do? And a lot of the responses, like there are like, I will say for the most part, the upvote system tends to kind of work where people will be reasonable more often than not. But there will be a lot of responses recommending like they go to like hard stacks, they start playing combo, like super hard control or something. And they're like, oh, you need to like pretty much play borderline CEDH to teach your pod a little lesson. Like you got to gain their respect by acting like this.
You know, something funny about, you're absolutely right in that, but something I find kind of funny is that when you see that coming from a more casual perspective, on some you know REDH commenters, and they'd be like, oh yeah, play like hard control or something. And to me, that usually doesn't like for some players, like I don't think that's necessarily even going to make you win a ton more, like going to like a hard control to just like punish one other person at the table. But I feel like you hear that referenced quite often as well.
It's sometimes I think the recommendation is like, yeah, play a higher
like play like 30 counter spells or
deck.
something.
Like yeah, play something more challenging and less fun in an effort to like it's shifting from like in internalized motivation of like I'm playing this game because I want to have fun.
Yeah.
To like I'm playing this game because I need to make my opponents lose. and it's just
well, that is what it kind of springs from sometimes. It's like, I've got this one guy in my pod who's playing a really strong deck and he keeps winning. Or maybe he's just a really good player and he keeps winning. How do I beat him? And like you're saying, now it's, instead of I'm playing to have fun, like you said, it's like I'm playing to punish this person or to stack him out, teach him that he can't really do this sort of thing. And it can be, it's not inherently wrong or bad, but it is generally a negative direction, I think, to go in.
Yeah, the win more games mindset can also extend to players who don't necessarily even like need to get up to that 25%, because oftentimes it is people like thinking that's not nearly enough. I should be winning at least half my games. And so you'll see strong players that also have strong decks. They're making good decisions in the game. They really don't need much more, but they gotta win. So they're gonna use the gift of gab. They're gonna politic super hard over every little thing. And often like whine about stuff, coerce other people into making bad deals. I think it's toxic as hell.
For me, it's probably my biggest like pet peeve in Commander. Like the thing more than when I see cards that specifically trigger me. Like, oh wow, look, another broken Commander that Wizards printed. That's just like crazy. It's like no. What upsets me much more than that is when you have that like kind of toxic manipulation kind of player. And it's not even always like intentionally like coercive or toxic, but it comes off that way, and it kind of is tiring, I would say, to be at a table with someone who's gonna try to edge out every single social situation they can get. It slows things down. It feels like it kind of undervalues my own agency. Just there's a lot of things I don't like about it.
I played a game recently. It was a miserable 5-player game, and I had like nothing go on most of the game, but towards the end of the game, I finally drew gas. And it's a very strong card, to be fair. I played a Regal Behemoth, and I had a Lightning Greaves in play, and I had that and a Mana Rock in play, I think, and I had 3 cards in my hand. Plus, the Monarch is nice. So I'm not describing this like there's like I'm objectively right, or there was like an objective. 3 of my opponents all collaborated to destroy it, because I had like multiple like protection.
You gotta
like,
kill the Lightning Greaves, gotta pull the card, gotta bait out a counterspell, something like that, right? Yeah.
And at the end of that, my Regal Behemoth got killed, or it survived, but then the person who played the first kill spell just ended up playing a board wipe after it anyway. So I was like, kind of like, what? All that. I know people, and I had no other things in play. I think we all know somebody who would have the Regal Behemoth and like a good board, and would still be like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that.
It's not doing anything.
I didn't argue. I could have broken out the politics, been like, I need whatever edge I can get back in this game. But I was like, it's Regal Behemoth, like whatever. Like, if they want to do that, like,
if you want to kill,
I could have fought for it.
Yeah.
But I think we've all played with a person who like would have had way less cause to fight for it.
Yeah.
And yet they still do.
The player that has like sticks the Ristic Study and then like argues that like actually I'm like keeping the board under control by drawing all these cards, kind of thing.
Yeah, or like, we're friends, I'm helping you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not,
like
we're cool, right? Like,
shout out to the most dangerous archetype in Commander, the group hug player who argues that he's helping everyone while enriching himself. But yeah, no, I understand totally what you mean, and I think what the main, and this is not very objective, but I would say the main point in the main thing that you're going to want to look for when you're doing like this politicking and like making deals and all this stuff is, I'm really just looking for someone to be a good actor, like to be trying not to like get one over too hard on someone. I understand like you're trying to make a good deal for yourself, right? Sure, whatever, but there's a point where it crosses the line into like you're just being obnoxious and maybe going a little too hard. But that's a thin line. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where that is.
We have a good story about that at the end of this episode.
Oh yeah, got a good. We call that a flash forward, or we're setting that up for later.
Yeah. So another thing aside from the EDH advice and like the overuse of politics is this is where a lot of like power level arms races come from. Which is actually not that bad, like you said earlier, if everyone's kind of on the same page about it, but oftentimes people just aren't. People are not at like an equal understanding of how much money they should be spending on this game or how much time they should be spending. And so you get people playing decks that are just objectively stronger than the rest of the group.
Yeah. One thing that I do want to say, I have some level of hope that in a little bit of a way, the bracket system, while it doesn't stop like an arms race situation, it maybe could put like a cap on it theoretically. I mean, I know a lot of people will do like it's technically a 3 kind of thing, right? But if you're arms racing, but you're all agreeing to stay in like a 2 or a 3 or whatever range, like maybe you arms race and then you get to like a ceiling and you can't go any higher, right? So everyone kind of understands. So maybe that works.
Yeah, the brackets are really nice for giving that objective thing to look at.
But one thing with the arms race situation is that much like in the real world, it's hard to de-escalate, hard to go down. It's much easier to go up in power than it is to bring everyone down a little bit. I mean, you'll see people do that sometimes. They're like, let's ban this one card, or let's take Soul Ring out of our decks, or let's ban Smothering Tithe in our pod or something, right? But it's hard to power down as a whole.
Yeah, no, an interesting experiment, and I'm gonna kind of move into talking about this more, but try and make a worse deck, like a worse commander deck, without it being a bad deck, if you can. It's a really fun experiment to try and see if you can like achieve that, if you could make a deck that its purpose is to facilitate more fair games.
Yeah.
And not do anything too crazy. It's really actually kind of fun. So the next thing I want to move into is sort of talking about the reasons why losing actually might be a good thing. And I think the number one thing is it affords moments for reflection and improvement in your either gameplay or maybe even deck building, like I was saying about making those weaker decks.
Or in the case of the Gargoyle, your evil plans.
Yeah. Like, for example, a good evil plan that I laid out was trying to facilitate, not that I need to help Spencer do that, but run my propaganda campaign where I tell everyone what a monster he is, and then just let him, let things play out as they do, and surely he will win some games, and people will see, I'm not the problem. It works pretty well.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I used to play this really strong deck of mine a lot of the time, and it was my Bruce and Elena Boros big stuff, kind of just, it's aggro technically, but done about as, so it's still like not the strongest possible strategy, but it's done about as well as I think I could do it. And there's maybe some things that could be stronger, but I think it's a pretty strong deck. And I was playing that a lot, and I actually noticed that I was winning more than my fair share of games, which started to make me question, am I winning these games because I'm a good player and the games are fair, or am I winning the games because I'm using better tools than my opponents? Because I think it is to some degree a skill. Like, people complain about like net deckers and just overpowered cards and stuff. It is kind of a skill to some degree in Magic and Commander to know what cards are good and to like make a better deck. And some people, like newer Commander players, just maybe don't know that as well.
Yeah, and I think our general play group, over the course of time, and like 8 or 9 or 10 players, whatever, I think we generally play a little bit less removal than most play groups, or the wider play group, and I think it leads to a lot of fun, but it also really makes commanders or otherwise commander, very strong commander cards that are like kill on sight, otherwise you go crazy, a lot stronger. Yeah. And sometimes I think specifically Elena is a card like that, where it's like you can be very explosive, and it's I think it actually can lead to very fun games to have explosive cards like that, but it's when everyone doesn't have the capability to be explosive in the pod, it can feel kind of bad sometimes. Or, like you said, they're not playing with the same tools sometimes, right?
So I think the Bruce and Elena deck, it kind of reminds me of a thing that you did with the Big Bird aggro toolbox. Who is Ishai, is that the bird's name?
Yes, Ishai and Tana the Bloodsower.
Tana the Bloodsower. And it was just like a kind of good stuff deck with a few combos in it, but it was playing all of the Mana Gorger Hydras and Ishai as like bait, like aggressive, like secondary win condition. So with that deck, it's like Bruce is the Ishai or the Mana Gorger Hydra that seems really threatening and like seems like the bigger problem, but it's really Elena.
It's like untap with Elena.
Yeah, make a million mana, play a lot of bigger creatures, and win with those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually built I think it was first maybe the Shadrix Silver Quill deck as a more mid to low power deck, and then realized
More
that
chill.
that wasn't really doing it because it had card drop baked into the commander, which was also like a really strong creature and just gives you everything. And I realized at a point, well, that's also probably a bit too strong.
You're like, I'm killing people a little too fast with this double strike commander that gets bigger.
So I switched to Bassandra Battle Seraph, which is a card that's nearly impossible to make too strong. It is from a different time of Magic and Commander. Its ability, its first one, rarely does anything, and the second one is okay.
Well, and you got the important third one, flying.
Flying is the best of its abilities. Yeah, being a bad Sarah Angel is its greatest trait.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my story of winning too many games. My self-reflection on that.
My own self-reflection, if you want me to share a little bit.
Please.
I have an Alan G. Falconwrath deck, which, very strong commander. The intuitive, like, thing people would do, like the powerful thing, most powerful, like, combo way to play that deck is you just play every madness card you can find, you discard until you get World Gorger Hydra and a reanimation, like an animate dead type card that combos with World Gorger Hydra, World Gorger Dragon. And you just, you combo off like that and go crazy. And I'm like, well, I really like this commander. I had a lot of fun playing the pre-con when that came out. I was like, this is actually really awesome. I can play like a cool control game, card advantage, discarding and actually casting madness creatures. It's sick. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to build this deck to like reanimate my madness creatures or like win in ways like that, right? It was never, and my problem is I built the deck too strong in such a way that it never does the thing that I built it to do originally. It never reanimates a bunch of madness creatures and attacks and blocks with them. All it does is it storms off with discard and madness synergy cards. It storms off with like Underworld, Bone Miser, stuff like the discard a card, get a black mana, cards like Underworld Breach, cards like the card that adds a mana for every creature in your graveyard. It just combos off.
Or just pinging everyone to death with Sir Conrad.
Yeah, or giving the freebooter red creature infect and dealing 10 damage by discarding my hand. Or Glinthorn Buccaneer, not a freebooter. Pirate, But, so, if you find that your decks are winning, but they're not winning, they're winning in a way that you don't want them to win, maybe you're too focused on winning. Maybe you're not focused enough on what you're trying to do, right? Like, and I don't play that deck. I don't play that Anji deck almost ever, and I'm probably going to take it apart at some point because I just don't like the way that it wins. I don't like the way that it plays. I don't like the type of... I can't bring it out very often.
Yeah, and you could change the deck, but I feel like if you made it that way in the first place, some part of you kind of wants that.
Yeah.
That's at least, like, that's how I feel about my decks like that. And I wouldn't want to change the deck or nerf the deck to, like, facilitate that, because then people are still going to see it and they're going to think it's that monster. Like, they're not going to let that go.
Yeah, so I think if you wouldn't want to change it. Maybe you could get away with building it from scratch again with a completely, very disciplined, but might just be time to move on. I think I've been a proponent over the course of my Commander career of taking apart many decks. I've probably had, 25, 30 decks, 40 decks maybe in the course of my Commander career, and I only have like 5 or 6 decks built right now. I'm a take them apart, put something new together kind of guy. Haven't done it as much lately, but historically that's what I've been, and I think it's a great experience. I'd recommend it. It's okay to say goodbye to decks. You can always rebuild them. You can keep a deck list of them and rebuild it if you want to.
I need to take a few out behind the proverbial woodshed. Yeah, that's thank you for sharing. Another thing to keep in mind with losing more games as an opportunity for self-reflection, your deck might be totally fine, but losing for the same reasons all the time, it might be a good opportunity to examine and see if you could tighten some things up in the deck a little bit. Mm-hmm. If maybe, say I really like the feeling of consistently having a mana rock on turn 2, or I like this certain thing happening in my deck, and it's just not happening that often.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not just bad luck. Maybe I could look at that and think, what could I actually do about this?
I think about your Verena Lich Queen deck, where I feel like in that deck you really do just want to go like Mana Rock on 2, your commander maybe on 3, and it doesn't like do anything super crazy. Like it just untaps and is kind of like a card advantage / like card selection engine for the rest of the game, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very, very easy thing to. I think you've done that in the past. You'd be like, I'm going to add some more Mana Rocks to this because I want to do this more often.
It just rarely feels bad to put in those, as I think Josh Lee Kwai calls them, those vegetables, those eat your vegetable cards.
Yeah.
It's like eating actual vegetables, and hypothetically, if I was ever to do that, I imagine it would make me feel better.
Yeah.
Or like exercise, you know, it's a self-improvement activity.
And you know, we always say this every time we talk about deck building, but you're probably not going to go wrong adding in more ramp and card draw to your deck, right? Like that's I mean, you guess you lose some cool slots for cool cards you like, but you know, it's never a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a very cold take, but it's as cold as it needs to be to keep things in your deck fresh. And keep things alive. So
to reiterate the point of this topic here, if you find that you're losing too many games, maybe you know, be a little more disciplined, maybe tune it up a little bit, you know, eat your vegetables, as they say.
And even decks that seem great in paper, if you have an Archidect account and you're looking through your deck list and you're goldfishing, you think this is great, it always plays out amazing, I have no problems with this. It might not actually play out that well in paper, because you have to, unless I know that you do this in goldfishing, which I actually never thought to do before, a little bit maybe, is think about what happens at like a certain turn if you get board wiped, or if you play a big creature and it gets removed, and maybe factor that into your goldfishing.
Yeah. What I'll do in goldfishing is usually if things are going well for me and it's getting a little bit too hard to just goldfish quickly, I'll just assume a board wipe happens. And then I just like, can I recover? Like, am I able to keep playing?
Which is smart. And I think that would actually be good goldfishing advice for people to factor in at like maybe turn 5 or 6, depending on how many things are in play.
Mm-hmm.
Just throw them all in the graveyard.
Yeah,
see what happens from there.
Or just be like, if I have a removal spell in my hand, just assume that maybe I really got to use it, and you know, just try to use it.
Or think that if it is that turn where a board wipe might be happening, when you're playing, think, do I have a counterspell, or do I have like a Teferi's Protection in my hand?
Yeah.
Because that's something that you would probably want to have or want to see at that point.
Yeah, or maybe like you run out of cards in your hand and you're like, okay, maybe someone killed my commander, and you just play it again and see if that feels good. That's what I do. But yeah, so I don't know. It's like you're saying, it's not always easy to get the feel for the deck just by playtesting, just by goldfishing on your own, right? But I do think that is a good recommendation if you want to see if your deck like functions. Like usually that's a good way to see like, do I have enough card draw? Am I doing things fast enough? Am I meaningfully impacting the game in the first 5 or 6 turns of the game? So yeah, I'd recommend that.
And to some degree, you've just got to play the games too.
Yeah.
There's no real substitute for that. You can goldfish as much as you want, but you've got to get practice with everything.
Yeah, and you might not also like play the best, right? Like it's easy to make mistakes in Commander. I mean, luckily we play in a play group where if you miss something or whatever, you know, people are usually pretty chill and letting you take it back or doing that.
And like we were saying earlier about the amount of games the average Commander player might get to play in a month, that doesn't provide a lot of opportunity for improvement. Like with a lot of other things like video games or maybe even like exercise or running or something, you can just kind of do that whenever you want to do it. Maybe not with sports. You have to actually get... Yeah. There's things you can do to practice, but outside of goldfishing and looking at your deck list, you can't really practice your gameplay skills at Commander outside of just playing the game.
Unless you're like the kind of guy who's going to like jump on like an online game.
You've got Magic Online, I guess, but that's
or like a webcam. Yeah, or if you're just like queuing webcam games every day or something. But I guess that if you're really a grinder, you know, if you're a CDH
so I guess
grinder,
if you really want to improve your skill and practice more, you maybe should look into something like that, because otherwise there's just nothing else you can do.
You can just maybe try to find some more friends. That can always help. Meet new people.
So there's a classic Command Zone mailbag question they used to get all the time, and it was something along the lines of, how do I get my playgroup to stop targeting me all the time? The cure-all answer to this is, and this is what Josh says most of the time, you've just got to lose more games.
Yeah.
You've just got to lose more often. You've got to prove to people that you can lose.
Yeah.
I think you and I, we built these vanilla challenge decks with the Ether Drift commanders, and I'd say they're actually really good decks, but they're both they meet this thing that I think is key to having fair and balanced games, where even when we're having what might be close to the best possible game, it is still possible for us to lose.
Yeah.
And some decks, that's just not the case.
Like, I built the mono blue Kalorna commander, and there are, you would think, like, okay, let's say you make like a crazy board, right? I'm not gonna be winning on that turn. I don't have like a combo way to win. I usually gotta like untap and wait, right? And there's a couple counter spells in the deck, but not like a ton of them, right? Like maybe 2 or 3 counter spells in the deck, right? So it's not gonna be a situation a lot of the times where I'm gonna lock out my opponents. I mean, maybe it's possible, right? Maybe it's possible, but it's definitely not built to do that. And I think it's a good sign of people might not agree with this, but I think it can often be a good thing for games when a board wipe can actually stop you from being in a winning position. Because there's a lot of commander decks that are very resilient or very like able to stop themselves from being killed by a board wipe, where ultimately like they can get to a point where like multiple people teaming up against them, having a lot of pieces of interaction, they just can't quite fight through it. Like they can't beat that archenemy commander. And that does set an expectation of, we can't let you have a Smothering Tithe, right? Or else it's not possible that we can win, potentially. So, good to be able to build a deck that can be toppled, I suppose.
Yeah, that's always something that maybe mostly by virtue of just playing aggressive wins by combat decks that I think we've achieved pretty well. Because those decks are actually pretty easy to stop most of the time, unless they are incredibly just super resilient. Yeah, I mean, I have something else going on.
I have a Naya combat, like very strong in the case that like in the sense that like it ramps really fast, but I really have no way to win in this deck other than attacking people. So there's been 4 or 5 times, you wouldn't expect this to happen, where I go crazy, have crazy insane boards, but I literally deck myself out by drawing my whole deck over the course of like a ton of like green value over turn, and not being able to kill people because people board wipe, or Jesse will play like tap all your creatures during combat kind of effects, and I just draw too much.
If your deck can actually lose to like multiple fogs, that's probably a sign that you built a pretty fair deck.
Yeah, I think so.
If it's possible for that to be a thorn in your side.
Yeah.
So you just gotta lose more games, because people will notice if you're always playing the strongest decks. They'll notice if you're always making the most optimal cutthroat play, and they're gonna treat you as you treat them. So you just have to be okay with, if you're gonna be like that, they're gonna look to balance the game by less so playing to the board and more playing to the player. It's not really going to matter if you do get like board wiped and you're, why are you doing anything to me right now? I just played my Regal Behemoth. Like I've got nothing. Like if your deck is that good and they've seen that happen before, they're just going to see the card. They're going to see it's with you, and they're going to get rid of it.
You're going to play your broken 4-mana commander that is going to make all your artifact tokens tap for mana, and then they're going to be like, yep, you can't have that, otherwise you're just going to win.
And don't be playing those commanders. We talked about this in the building for the best experience episode, but if you don't want people to target you, you just really shouldn't be playing certain commanders. And that's an unfortunate thing that Wizards is even making those, because they're kind of setting players up to have a bad time. Because I don't think it's reasonable that every commander player think about these things that often, especially those people who are playing once a week.
Yeah.
And maybe even less than that. Like if you play once every other month, you're just going to play strong commanders, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I think those cards, I mean, this isn't to say that, not, everyone playing very strong commanders to do that sort of thing can lead to maybe good balanced games, right? But I don't know. I tend to think that these broken cards are if you really want to do that sort of thing, maybe put it in the 99, right? Build like a good deck with like a commander that's not consistently every time going to go from 3 mana to 6 mana on turn 4 or whatever, right? You don't have to always do that.
If you're playing at best once a month and you're playing that broken commander, you're either going to have the game where you completely stomp everyone and you think, oh my god, my deck is awesome. Or you can have the game where after that happens, everyone targets the shit out of you, you do nothing, and you think, man, my opponents, they're a bunch of meanies. They just bully me. What are they, stupid or something?
I'm stun locked by this memory I have of walking around in a Costco listening to Joey Schultz talk about how it's such a fun experience to watch his opponents storm off with a Gaia's Cradle. And like being very extremely jovial, like laughing about how great that is. And for me, that's not generally something that I love. It's not my favorite experience. So
it's so epic and cool.
That's not to say that, it can't be fun sometimes. And I'm probably just nitpicking too hard because it triggered me at one point in one specific day in my life. But I just, if you're looking for a chill game, if you're looking for some good experiences, maybe the insane mana, like broken $2,000 lands aren't the place to go.
Well, that kind of ties into the way I want to round out this topic is we've talked about the benefits of losing more games, but how do we cope with the fact that we're losing 75% of our games, or maybe even sometimes more? It'll feel like more. Well, I think the first step is kind of that mental reframing of looking at it through the lens of the Xanatos Gambit and thinking, did I lose? Like, what did I learn from this experience?
Exactly.
Even if I did make a mistake, and I know how bad it feels when you make a big mistake in Commander, and you kind of like, especially if your opponent's kind of being like a dick about it,
yeah.
which is the other thing that I'd recommend for having better experiences and how to cope with this more is just play with your friends, or play with, maybe not friends, because this isn't, you'd think it's a fair assumption to say that you like playing with your friends, but play with people that you enjoy playing with.
Yeah.
So even when you're losing and they're winning, or they're doing some real degen shit, you can at least be happy for them, and you can at least enjoy being around them and hope that they're not making your game miserable. Because I think we both say we've, maybe even with each other on occasion, played with people who they're not trying to necessarily, but have made the game very unfun one way or another.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just the nature of the beast sometimes, because Commander lends itself to those situations where somebody might take a 10-minute turn and then not win the game, or they might have 10 mana on turn 4. It's just going to happen sometimes.
I'm, like I was talking about with my Anji deck, I'm the person that's guilty of taking a 10-minute turn to storm off and kill everyone and be apologizing every 2 minutes, because I know that what I'm doing is not, it's like a puzzle, and they're all just waiting for me to solve it. And it's not like a puzzle, because it's just like doing game, it's not deterministic. Like, it's just like, do a thing, you all take a damage, draw a card, do a thing, you all take a damage, draw a card. It's not very enjoyable.
A phrase that I break out frequently so as not to apologize, because you're not necessarily doing anything wrong when you do that. I will just say I thank you for your patience.
That's good.
Because it's how it goes sometimes. And most people are pretty okay with it,
yeah.
But just saying like a little something like that maybe makes, because you acknowledge that you're taking a long time and maybe you could be doing things faster, but it's a complicated game, and everyone at some point probably finds themselves in that position.
That is me when I'm playing that Anji deck or something, and I my hand is like a tutor and like other cards, and I've got some stuff set up, and I'm thinking about if I can, as a certain group of people would say, can I find the line? Can I go for the win? And then I spend like a minute thinking about it and then just pass my turn. That's always really, you're like, sorry guys. But on you were talking about misplaying, right? A little bit earlier. And I want to ask you, Eli, have you ever been in the situation where maybe it's a commander game, or maybe, I think it's more common in like a 1v1 game, maybe like a limited game, where it's an old classic situation where your opponent like plays a spell and you have a counter spell, and you should have played the counter spell, right? Maybe it's a card you definitely should have countered. But now that you haven't countered it and they play a second spell, you don't want to counter that one because you'll show them that you misplay. You don't want to show them. Yeah.
No, I had that exactly happen on Tuesday when the store was filled to the brim with people. It was incredibly loud and overstimulating, and Yeah, it was just not a...
Or you've got like a removal spell and you're like, I should have done it earlier. And I don't want to do it now later, even though it would maybe save me something, because that would be admitting that I made a mistake, that everyone would see that I could have played it. Yeah. So that is to say, if you're playing with your friends who aren't going to berate you for that or make you feel embarrassed, maybe you'll be more willing to just, be okay and chill with making a mistake.
No, in that game I was talking about, I missed something and like didn't react fast enough and just let something happen, and then later in the game, 2 other people responded to something like after the turn had been passed and rolled it entirely back, and so I was like, you know what, maybe I
should have just said something.
Why not?
Based.
It's casual. But yeah, so just try and play with people that you like in general. I actually think more people need to practice saying no to playing with people that they know they're not going to have a good time with. And this is another common thread of our EDH, of people complaining about play groups or playing with random people and having a bad time, and then going to people on Reddit and being like, what can I do about this in the future? And they just say, like, don't get into this situation in the future. Yeah. Stop complaining about this and just like do something about it. Like, just don't think how you can fix this inherently broken situation. It's just not worth it if it could be fixed.
And if someone was rude to you in a Commander game, you don't always need to be validated that you were right in that situation. You could just not play with that person if you think it's not going to lead to good experiences. But that's a pet peeve of my own. People go like, I did this thing and this person was rude to me about it. And it's like, that's going to happen sometimes. You're
just not going to get along with some people, and they're not going to like you, and you're not going to like them, and that's okay. You try to, over time, it's kind of how it is with the power level dilemma of like this readjusting the artillery piece, like after your shot, like kind of trying to work on your aim. Like you take a shot, you re-aim a little bit, take another shot, and you try and slowly work towards something. You've got to do that with people too in Commander, and you should try and play with people that you enjoy, and you can handle losing to, because if you can't handle losing to, I used to have this problem where you play with in Commander a lot of people who are just like super unpleasant or cocky, and then all of a sudden it becomes that external thing again where I have to make them lose. I'm not playing for my own enjoyment. I'm not playing to win. I'm playing to make this person lose.
If that guy wins the game, I'm gonna feel really bad because I don't like them and they're cocky, and it's gonna reinforce their opinions about themselves that I disagree with, right? And it's not a good experience, probably.
Yeah, you shouldn't, as an adult human, have to think, I'm going to check this person's ego via the card game that we're playing. That shouldn't be that's not your responsibility. But I have a problem, man. Maybe it's mental illness, but I feel like, in that position, I feel a responsibility.
You're the law keeper. Gideon's law keeper.
Yeah, so it's just, that's the last thing I want to say. Just play with people that you enjoy. Because like when somebody has that really long turn of doing like the crazy degenerate thing, I don't want to think in my mind, oh my God, this person needs to kill themselves. I want to think, hey, good for you, man.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. Even if I don't really think it was that cool. I want to like try and reframe be more positive like that.
I'd recommend that.
So yeah, was there anything else you wanted to add on to the how to cope?
Cope and seethe. No, I don't know. Just try and strive for being a better person. I know, crazy suggestion. Why don't we move on to our final topic?
Yeah, speaking of people who are not okay with losing games, there was a recent, I think about 2 weeks ago at this point, and I am bound to get some details of this wrong.
Yep. Drama.
Yeah, we're returning to the old drama segment. There was a CEDH tournament called the SLC 10K, and in their, normally at the CEDH tournaments, it's my understanding their rounds, they have a timer. The finals do not. The final game, this is like, how long could it possibly go? It's CEDH, right?
Yeah.
Games go like 6 turns, right? Like max. How long could it? And we meme on CEDH. We were known maybe CEDH haters on the channel.
Oh yeah.
I would not have believed if somebody told me about this that it was real, because it seems like the joke you would write about CEDH games. There's been some, for context, there's been a lot of discussion and drama and controversy around the CEDH tournament scene due to the amount of draws in the format that are the result of over politicking or manipulation into a draw. For example, somebody maybe goes to win the game and another player could stop that win, but to do that would put them at a disadvantaged position to another player, perhaps.
Yeah.
And so they will, rather than continue to be in the game at a probably lower percent chance to win, they will turn to the other person who is not trying to win and say, I could just let them win right now. If you don't draw with me, we all lose, and that person wins. This interesting kind of prisoner's dilemma situation.
And I think that is an inherent problem with the competitive multiplayer format that is very toxic, and another reason why I do not think CDH is a good format. But that is my personal opinion and digressing. But I will say another piece of context for that. In addition to that kind of prisoner's dilemma drawing situation, there's another problem in the CDH community at this time, which is people playing these I don't know what you call them, like very like value, like maybe stacksy, maybe a little bit decks that just try to prolong the game and out resource, like this is like
and maybe work towards
that situation potentially
as they're out to win rather than playing a more proactive deck.
Yeah, because there's like an old adage, in CDH that's like, and I might just be making this up, but the first person to go for a combo win, is you don't want to be the first guy.
Oh,
because,
you
get stopped, right?
The first nail to stick out gets hammered down. That's true of regular Commander too, for the most part.
Yeah, unless no one has anything, then you just win. But so yeah, being the player that doesn't try to win, not trying to be proactive, trying to be reactive and value focused, So that, I think that, from my understanding of CDH, is that's been kind of a problem amongst deck building in creating longer games, and I think that has led to what is the SLC 10K drama, which, like you were saying, Eli, we haven't even said what it is yet, but I wouldn't believe it was real if there wasn't video footage of all of it.
Yeah, which, funny enough, took a longer time than usual to get that footage out because the file upload size was extraordinarily long. I don't know if we said yet, this game was 11 hours long.
Yeah, this is the finals of a tournament, like for money, 10K prize pool, CDH tournament.
Yeah, so the big drama was there was this player, because all the CDH players, they got their fun little superhero names or whatever they think of it as. Golden Sabretooth, who was exercising his gift of gab to the extreme.
Yeah, I think he's kind of like a micro celebrity in CDH. People know who he is or something.
Yeah, he does art or something. And so people like this guy. So there were a lot of people willing to defend this guy and be like, that's just what you do in CDH. The thing that I find especially interesting about this situation is, so normally they wouldn't have the time limit in the CDH finals, but apparently it was the case that he pushed for there to be a time limit on this final game because he had a flight to catch the next day. And if I'm getting any part of this wrong, I'd like people to correct us. This is my understanding, and it doesn't make sense but I've reread this main r/competitive EDH post multiple times.
Do you know if the game was played on the same day as the rest of the tournament, or was it like a day 2 situation? Do you know about that?
I believe that they had a few games before this happened, because I think the day upload that they finally did
was the whole day.
Had more games in it. Because it was a 19-hour stream from day 2. Yeah, day 2. So the weird thing is, so he needed to get going somewhere, and that's why they even had a time cap on the game. But then he was also the person who was mainly responsible for it going as long as it did, which is, to me, now it seems like a contradiction in actions of like, I genuinely need to go somewhere, so we need to put a cap on this, makes things go longer. But there's some people theorizing, and this is the only way that I think can really like make that make sense, is he wanted there to be a time cap on the game to have the potential option to draw at a certain time, and therefore acted in such a way to make it go to whatever time, because they didn't have they didn't say like, oh, this game ends at 11 hours. They didn't they're like, no, it just has a time cap on it.
My assumption is that like it must have ended at like early in the morning type stuff, where he has to like he has to like catch a flight in like 4 hours or something, or maybe he has to go back and sleep so he can catch his flight. Like, also, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Eli, because I'm not fully understanding everything about it. My understanding is that it's not just like politicking that he was doing to like extend the game. It was like taking very long times to think at every moment of a stack, as well as like every time something happens, like you said, the politicking, like saying, like trying to reason with other players what they should or shouldn't do in between every action of like a giant stack.
And I haven't watched the video yet, although that would be a fun thing to look at. The main post here says he would take 10 plus minutes on decisions, not his turns, just like general decisions.
I think did I recall correctly that someone said there was like a 5-hour turn or something, or a 5-hour stack? Was that a thing, or am I making that up?
It's possible. The bulk of the length apparently was the result of like one like stack battle over resolving a cloud of fairies.
Yeah. EDH takes reaction video to 11-hour.
Oh, that'd be a great video. We should do that. Yeah, so it's just it's interesting to me. And so people are like saying that he was kind of trying to bully like the other players into like making certain decisions, and then it kind of ended with him bullying everyone into like trying to give him the win, because it's like, I mean, how long are we gonna let this go on, guys?
It's like, guys, like I'm favored here.
When I think most people agree, and this is at least main poster, seem to think that it was the Rog Sai, as they call it, or Rog Thras, Rograk and Thrasios player, making the most proactive, like kind of being the person who was probably favored to win, but he just from there kind of drew things out and really pushed the time limit into working towards that draw.
I think this 11-hour game kind of shows why CDH players have to shorten the names of all the cards they talk about. So like,
oh my god, imagine if they actually use the real names for everything.
Imagine if they had to say Rograk and Thrasios instead of Rog Thras every time.
20-hour game.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I can't say Thassa's Oracle. I've got to say Thoracle, right? Like I can't take too much valuable time.
And you know, we found out what they do with all that extra time is they just put it back into more CDH games.
Yeah.
The 11-hour game.
Now, to be fair to the CDH community, because I'm sure they I'm sure they're looking for my opinion. That's usually a lot of people they hold that pretty high, yeah. My understanding is that the CDH community and creators as a whole have a pretty disavowing take of this situation. Like they're not supportive of it.
They have mostly condemned this person and their actions, not to the degree of like, hey, everyone send hate towards this guy, which I wouldn't encourage that either. I mean,
I might.
Just kidding. The internet, they do what they're gonna do, and you don't need to help. Like it's just somebody else is gonna do it for you.
Yeah.
I did see, and maybe we'll post it in the video or something. He made a tweet after this event that was something like along the lines of, wow, that was one of the craziest finals of my career, like really awesome, fun game, thanks to the organizer and all my opponents, and like not acknowledging the drama of it at all, and I just thought it was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, and maybe this is a little bit of a haterade statement, but you know, I think back to the classic, what is it? What career? You know, the whatever that mean. CDH player, you know, micro celebrity career of making 11-hour games in the finals to win $4,000 or whatever. Goes pretty hard.
So yeah, I mean, if anything, I feel bad we didn't make this episode sooner, because if he had listened to this, he would have understood losing the CDH tournament can actually be pretty good for him.
It might have been good for his reputation.
I mean, personally, I think I'd always rather lose a game of Commander, even if there were massive prizes on the line, for rather than lose 11 hours of my life at that. God, I get winded, and I feel like I get exhausted after the freaking pre-release, man. I can't imagine 11 hours in a single CDH game.
Yeah, and this isn't to specifically talk about this person individual because I haven't watched the video. I do not know them. I do not know how they act. I do not know their tone or their mannerisms. But can you imagine spending 11 hours having like some sweaty like CEDH player being like theatrical and like politicking with you?
And it'll be easy for a lot of people to see this situation and say to the other opponents, like, man, like, get a life, like, you guys should have just like given up and like let this be like earlier. But like, honestly, I want to say good on those guys for not allowing
folding.
this sort of behavior, like like making him see the actual like results of like what he was trying to do. Because this is not
allegedly
fun. So I wonder if anything more will come of this. But there's a big discussion in the CEDH community over this sort of thing right now, and so good for them for looking into some self-improvement.
Yeah. So that's just our little take here on that situation. Good. Always happy to see CDH drama. Always makes me happy.
Yeah, and if anyone listening to this, if we got anything glaringly wrong or there's something we missed, please, I'd love to have it pointed out. Also, if anyone has any thoughts on if they should lose more games or there's any other upsides that we didn't think about, please let us know what your experience is with experimenting with more equitable game loss percentages.
I think and my biggest recommendation that you gave earlier, Eli, was I really think it is a really fun experience to, like you said, Eli, try to build a deck that's not bad but is lower power level than your other stuff, but still be a good deck. I think that is a great experiment. I would recommend to everybody. I think you can have a lot of fun games.
Yeah, and fight back against that mentality that a lot of Commander players have of thinking, oh, well, this deck can't guaranteed win the game when it's in its good position, so it's a bad deck. Or this game doesn't win 75% of its games. It's a bad deck. You can have a good deck and have it not be a good deck.
What's the old thing? It's like, oh, if your deck can't win with 10 mana, what are you even doing? If you can't win with an omniscience in play, what are you doing?
Like, fight back against that. That shouldn't be the case in the casual brackets of Commander. Just get away from that.
Yeah.
So I think I'll leave it there. I'll say everyone give us a follow on the X or the Blue Sky, or subscribe here. Leave us comments, please. And we will hopefully have some more videos and episodes out later this summer. So thank you everyone for listening.